Welcome to the Healthy Lifestyles Podcast, located here in Northwest Phoenix, Glendale, and Peoria. My name is Dr. Nick Hunter. I'm a doctor of physical therapy, and I own and operate Preferred Physical Therapy, where we have helped hundreds of people aged 40 plus stay active and independent, live free from painkillers, and avoid surgery, even if they've had pain for years. I have written over 8 ebooks on how to treat common injuries and hosted numerous webinars, all in an effort to help educate the public on how to care for and maintain their bodies to live with joy, dignity, and without compromise. This podcast is intended to help you make better decisions about your health so you can find joy in the journey by bringing together top healthcare providers, fitness experts, and nutritionists in the area to give you the knowledge and confidence needed to make good health decisions. Thank you for joining us today. I'm excited about our guest today. We have a naturopathic physician, Dr. Lena Fernandez from Moringa Natural Health Center, located in Sun City, Arizona. She is an expert in the field of natural medicine. She is a naturopathic physician who lives with a mission to inspire, empower, and transform lives worldwide with natural therapies. Dr. Fernandez specializes in nutrition, mind-body medicine, and how to balance thyroid and hormones naturally. She is the CEO and founder of a thriving clinic, Moringa Natural Health Center, located in Sun City nearby. And her personal life journey began in Europe, Kosovo, where she was born and grew up on her family's organic farm. Well, Dr. Fernandez, did I miss anything in that introduction?
You did awesome. Thank you so much, Nick, for having me here. And I'm excited to share some really powerful tools for your viewers so they can hopefully help them to get to their next level of their health. And you did great. Thank you so much for having me again.
Yeah, our pleasure. And thank you again for accepting the invitation here. I mean, tell me a little bit about this organic farm your family has. Long time? You guys been doing this for a long time. And did you continue it here in Arizona?
I wish I did continue here. My parents are trying to. I was born and raised in Eastern Europe, so I grew up there. I moved here. We had our own whole food store there, and
Okay.
we had really healthy living in a sense, more natural. I didn't grow up having any health issues, thank God. Unfortunately, there was a political turmoil. There was a war in our native country, so and all of our properties were demolished. We're unfortunately homeless. We're fortunate enough to escape the country, and we moved here to the United States in 1999, which I was 14 years old. So that's kind of my journey where I started. And then this is kind of a good transition to educate the viewers why I chose this profession too, is because when I moved here, I started high school, and across the high school was a McDonald's. And you can imagine what I was eating, coming from eating berries and walnuts and all the healthy foods, fresh, non-packaged, to eating foods that was completely processed, milkshake for breakfast and ice cream for breakfast, because everybody was doing it. And then all this
Very
stuff,
American of you, yes.
I know I became Americanized very quickly, I should say. And I got really sick. So I gained weight. I had skin issue, joint issue, and I was playing sports at the time. Even as a kid, I played sports and volleyball, soccer, and I was trying to continue my sports athletes performance here. And I started having many injuries. And every time I went to the doctor, as you know, right, as most of the people do, they give you a pill, and you're well, what do I do with this pill? You just take it, it's supposed to solve the problems. Well, it didn't. So that's when I became very passionate about, after 4 or 5 years of struggling, going through this cookie cutter approach, said, you know what else, what could I do differently to get my health back? Because I didn't want to start in college and not feeling well, right? So then I started becoming more into science. I became a chemist and a scientist. I started doing more research and development for different pharmaceuticals, like anywhere. We studied the opioids, steroids, vaccines, environmental toxicity,
Wow, okay.
glyphosate. So I was very fortunate as a chemist to get a scholarship to college, because as an immigrant, that I had to work really hard to make it to college, because I didn't have all the luxury like the other American students had, right? Getting loans or any other way. So I worked really hard, and then I had this aha moment. Okay, so we studied, it was the last study I did before I entered medical school, was plant-based diet. We called it rabbit diet, and how that reduces joint inflammation, specifically in autoimmune conditions. And then those studies were remarkable. And we studied on animals and then we replicated in humans. Were really well controlled studies. And then so we had this aha moment. Nutrition is really a huge part. Nutrition and movement, those are the biggest thing to first of all, prevent major health issues. And secondly, we need to start there to regain our health back, because we know chemicals are needed at a time, but they're not something that our bodies are designed to rely on a long term. So I did the research for about 10 years and then continue on in medical school. And then here I am as a naturopathic doctor. For me, I understand the chemistry of the body system. So it's very important to get to the root cause. So as a natural doctor, we're looking at the whole perspective. For example, okay, so someone may come in with rheumatoid arthritis, which we know is an autoimmune condition that all begins in the gut. And then we need to look at, okay, is it because there's a toxic environment overload, could be lead, mercury, or cadmium, or is it because there's not enough minerals, nutrients that the patient is getting, or is it because they're not getting enough movement, not enough oxygen? What's the cause? What's the root cause versus
Wow.
just,
So do you go into that with them then when they come in for a consult? These are all forms or lines of questioning that you have to better identify how to prescribe the next thing? It's understanding of their exposure rates to some of these things.
yeah.
Obviously, you're going to get a log of diet of what they're eating, so you can better understand what's in the body. Do you do any blood tests with that as well?
Yes,
Holy
exactly.
cow! Okay.
Yeah, I work with, I've been very fortunate as a scientist. I have a special connection with biotechnologies all around the country. So I have patients do, whether it's a blood test or a urine test or saliva test, look at the stress level, look at their hormones, look at the inflammation. I do blood tests, here as well. So we do what we called initially with my patients overview of 360-degree view of their body system, from inflammation, from the gut, from the brain, from adrenals, thyroid, and so forth. And how
Wow.
comprehensive we have to be, it depending on if I have a patient who is, for example, a cancer patient, I have to be a more detailed versus someone who's an athlete. It's like, I just want to look at what kind of mineral deficiency do I have, so you can formulate a protocol that I'm missing, that my body, everything is individualized, and that would vary the depth of. But yes, I'm a huge on data gathering, because then we know exactly how aggressive I need to be with the treatment. And with autoimmune conditions, we don't have a lot of time. We can't waste to say, we may need to put them on steroid, and we may need to work with an orthopedic doctor or any other specialist to get them stabilized temporary if it's in severe form, septic arthritis. But otherwise, with some sort of inflammation like that, it's so aggressive to cause main damage in the joints. We need to be aggressive with the treatments like intravenous IV, clean their systems, replenish with minerals so they absorb 100%.
Wow. So then how long would you say it would take for a patient to come in? Maybe they have some of these issues, they come in and they go in for the evaluation. How long are you able to spend with them in clinic, perform the tests, send out the samples, get the results back? How long does something like that take?
Usually my initial visit with my patients is around 90 minutes. So I get a really
an hour and a half.
Yes, I am
Wow,
very
that's amazing.
Yeah, I get to know my patients from mind, body, soul, kind of physical. So I look at the whole perspective. And then we may need to do some testing. And then if they have already some result or some data that from previous medical providers, they bring that in and I can evaluate. And then I put on the 2 weeks, what we call the reset body systems protocol, whether it's doing a basic detoxes. Basically, when it comes to doing detoxes, is eliminating inflammatory foods, which I'm going to share with you right away.
Yeah,
So they
good.
start seeing immediate results. Oh, I'm sleeping better. My joints are not, I don't wake up and I can't move, or it takes me 2 hours to wake up my joints, or I'm having less downtime when it comes to pain and inflammation, or they don't need as much opioids or anti-inflammatory, because at the end of the day, my goal and your goal is to help our patient not have to rely on chemicals, because we know long term that's going to cause side effects, whether it's kidney, renal failure, all abdominal or esophageal ulcers. All those can happen, and how quickly patients get the side effects is going to vary from person to person. But we usually, my patients see really good results very quickly, because we are aggressive the first 3 to 6 months till we get their very healthy, stable, and then we go on the maintenance.
Now, how, if you didn't have 90 minutes to talk to a patient, how different would your treatment be?
Completely different. It's hard to get to know your patients if you just get to spend 5 minutes with them, because
Yeah,
each question you ask, and from a medical perspective, it gives you the next clue what needs to happen next with that patient. So if you don't get to spend an hour and a half, or at least more than what they're normally are used to spending with a provider, you need to know, is this mental emotional case, right? Because a
right.
lot of pain, sometimes physical pain, manifests from past trauma. Is it physical pain because they have a recent injury, or is it
Yes.
overused joints, or where is that coming from?
What
And
is
then
their
from
relationship with pain?
exactly, you don't need to know exactly where the root cause, and then you ask the patient, okay, what need, and then you get their permission. What do you think needs to happen? And a lot of time they don't even realize that they're carrying so much past trauma or wounds or infections that have never been cleared. They've had small intestine bacteria overgrowth, some severe infection in their intestines. All these years could be 10 plus. The majority of my patients come to me on their last hope, right? On their last stop.
Yeah,
They've carried
yeah.
all this junk with them for so long. Not only is their joints, the muscles, the bones, all are compromised, but now their brain, now the adrenals, thyroid, the gut, etc. So it's a big mess. So that's where we go from. I get to know, and then we build this relationship, and patients are aware that, number one, it's going to take some work. It's not an
Yeah,
overnight, you got to do work. I'm going to give you the tools. I'm going to give you the exact roadmap, what your body needs to happen to get you to the next level of living joint pain free, having more energy, more libido, whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish, lose weight. But you got to do the work, because this is not like, okay, here's a pill, take it every day, and then should be fine.
right. It should fix it.
Fix it, right?
That's excellent because it's one aspect of our practice model that we're trying to help a lot of people understand better is how important it is to have the time, the one-on-one time with your provider. In physical therapy, we come from a model where typically the industry faces two big complaints. One of them is they get 5, 10, maybe 15 minutes of one-on-one time with their provider, or because of that limited time, they only are able to, or they end up getting prescribed exercises they can easily do under very little supervision at home. And so they feel like it's a waste of time, but they're not going to get in there and get actual one-on-one time or hands-on treatment or do exercises that are that productive for them. So they feel like, well, I've done all the exercises and physical therapy doesn't help. Whereas in our model, because we're direct to consumer, we're direct to patient model, we are able to spend it up to 60 minutes one-on-one with them to really break down movement patterns, muscle tightness, joint stiffness, things like that to better understand what the root cause is. Because an irritated disc, lumbar spine issue isn't just because that disc is painful. It's broken down because of these other things up the chain that have contributed to this dysfunction. But
Mhm.
many folks just think, well, can't we just inject it or do something that's going to take the pain away? It's like, yeah, we can do that, but it's not going to fix the issue. It's going to take it away temporarily, but it's just going to cover up the mask. And I feel like a lot of patients are coming to you with a similar frustration or similar level of absent care that is missing the root cause, missing the real feature that needs to be exposed. And a 90-minute session with you is going to is going to open up so many opportunities for you to diagnose what's going on.
Absolutely. And that's a cool thing, even for me, like, especially when I see pain, physical pain, chronic pain conditions. If a lack of movement is something that they just either they use excuse it because I don't have time, or gyms are closed, or I don't have, I just can't move because I don't know how to move, all these. Then I
Mm-hmm.
refer to physical therapy. Hey, let's work with a physical therapist in addition to what we're doing here. Let's get those joints regulated. Let's get those joints strong, especially if it's a bulging disc, like you said. Yeah, we can inject steroids, corticosteroids, but it's still weak. The surroundings are weak. So
Right.
we need to strengthen those, regain the strength of what the joint's actually supposed to do, so you don't have that issue and next time have a bigger problem. So absolutely, and that's a cool thing for us. It's all about versus of symptomatic care. We have said, we have a great team here that we said, a solution care. Let's give the patient, and then at the end of the
Love it.
time,
Yeah, we do
yeah,
outcomes, and you guys
yeah,
talk
I'll
about
come.
solutions. I love it.
Yeah, and you just like you said, you gone through this program, you did it, you graduated, now continue applying at home, whether that's like you want to stretch for 5 minutes a day or whatever it is you're going to continue on, because health wellness is a journey. It's not you just go to a physical therapist for 6 weeks and hey, I should be pain free, right? It's a journey that you got to figure out the underlying cause. Get in a sense, we want to empower our patients to take full control of their own health. Instead of
Exactly.
saying, well, I'll just wait till I have another injury or another bulging disc or until I break my medial meniscus again or have a meningeal
Right.
tear, and then surgery is the only option. So we all so we get to know our patients really well, and then I'm very fortunate that we have a really good team, awesome team, other providers in our area as well that I refer if needed to, because at the end, patients need a good community to help them stay healthy. We have so much information out there, but they're confused and they're overwhelmed and they don't know where to start. So
Completely agree with you. And that's one of the things that I love talking about with providers like yourselves, where understanding that there's a model of care that exists outside of what we historically or typically consider to be healthcare for reasons such as this, when you feel like there's something missing or something absent, or are just ready for that elevated level of care to really get to the root cause of what's going on. These things exist. And many folks don't even consider gut health or long-term infections or underlying autoimmune dysfunctions that they didn't know they had based on environmental factors. Is it insulation in their home or exposure they've had as a child? These things can play a part in overall joint inflammation or overall well-being that doesn't even bring into the realm of their consideration.
that's right.
Excellent. So you mentioned earlier about gut health, and I just mentioned it too, but what is that exactly? How would typical people who have no idea what that, because I still don't feel like I'm comfortable being able to define what gut health is. What is that, and how does it relate to joint health or to musculoskeletal, injuries dealing with nerves, muscles, or bones or joints? How does that play a part?
When we want to look at, for let's say we have a patient in front of us that potentially is struggling with some sort of joint, nerve, bones, muscles dysfunction, right? And then we all are a candidate for having a poor gut health, and that's 99% of our population, just because of the quality of foods that we're eating, the lack of movement, stress, and so forth. So, how do we define what's a healthy gut is and what's not? First of all, we have to go back to before they even born. We have to ask question. By the way, did your mom complain with what she was conceiving you? Did she have any problems? Was she on certain chemicals, on certain drugs, right? And were you breastfed the first 2 years of your life? Because what happens is that we're born with this gut where 75% of our immune system is supposed to be in, and we're supposed to have a strong digestive system. So when we drink, we eat all the great things, we're supposed to absorb and digest. So the rest of our system, like muscles and joints and nerves and bones, are supposed to get these minerals and nutrients from food that we eat. But what happens a lot of time, imbalance in our gut starts because we've never had a chance to develop our healthy gut from the get-go. So now we have a
Mhm.
weak barrier. So now when we eat, let's say broccoli, instead of absorbing and digesting, so our brain and our joints and our heart and the rest of our system uses, we flush it out. We pee it out or we eliminate it. Or we store it as in a form of toxins because your body, it doesn't know how to process that due to again the stressors that could be happening overall. So I do a test with my patients, either a stool test or a blood test. The blood test determines, okay, what kind of foods they could be eating that are causing some disharmony in their gut, especially if they're coming in and saying, I'm gaining weight, I have joint pain, I'm not sleeping, I have thyroid issue, I'm stressed, anxiety, depression, etc., or heart issue, any of those. So let's look at the gut, see, okay, well, are you actually eating the right foods that your body's supposed to get the right nutrients to keep the rest of your system, like joints, muscles, and healthy? And secondly, look at is there any hidden sources of infection in the intestine? Because a lot of time you don't have symptoms. Some people do, but you don't have digestive issues, like not being able to, or you may have diarrhea or constipation or some abdominal pain. People don't even have those symptoms. They still have gut issues. So you have to got to dig deeper, but they have other symptoms like pain and inflammation. 99% of the time is starts in the gut. So that's how we look at, we evaluate, and we want to have a strong gut health because, again, we want to be able to absorb and digest. So what happens is that we're normally, when we look at our ancestors, and we did this research and studies on this too as a scientist, we would look at our ancestors, they had much better digestion absorption ratios back in their days because they don't have so much toxins that were overloaded. Now, the environment, everybody's driving, we don't have enough trees, the foods are not as clean as we used to, we're not moving as much, we're not hunters and gatherers. So they're absorbing, so they're being drinking, for example, a gallon of water, 80% of that they absorb it. What happens in our society, and this is what I see with our patients, they drink 2 gallons of water, but they only absorb a quarter of that.
Right.
Because of
Interesting.
the digestion. Yeah, and it's like, when I'm drinking water, all I do is pee. I don't have to go to the bathroom 20 times. That's not the right thing. That's exactly, that they're not absorbing fluids. What makes us think they're absorbing nutrition? And hence they're
Wow.
deficient, right? They're deficient. And now their nerves, the nerve pain, neuropathy, it's very common. You don't have to be diabetic to have neuropathy. But patients
Right.
often come here, I have hand pain, I have, my feet are hurting,
So
my muscles are hurting, I feel like something is off, what's going on? And then, so when you don't have minerals and nutrients, you're not going to be able to carry oxygen. So we're all lacking, or so we call it nutrient deficiency, but really we're oxygen deficient. We're not. So what does muscles need? Oxygen,
no,
right?
you're right.
So,
That does trigger me because what I'm thinking about it is the fact that when we have an inefficient digestive tract or system to absorb the necessary minerals, and often we don't understand, from a standpoint, from a general knowledge-based understanding that muscles need the minerals to contract, but then also to relax.
mhm,
And calcium is a big one. Calcium is what actually helps the muscle to lengthen or to relax. And if that's being poorly absorbed, and even though we may be thinking we're taking calcium supplements or I drink plenty of milk, when it's inefficient and it's not able to absorb correctly and then get into the places that it needs to be in our muscles, muscle tension, spasm pain, myofascial pain, these are all things that we deal with constantly. It hasn't even occurred to me that it might be an inefficient digestive tract system that would need to be reset or at least improved somehow in order to help that spasm relax, in order to help it, versus taking muscle relaxers, which only make you sleepy and tired. It's so frustrating it's so frustrating when I get people on muscle relaxants. A whole other discussion, but well, I'm now thinking about so many different ways of the reality that does exist in understanding digestive efficiency is another we talk about movement efficiencies, strength efficiencies, and even core strength balance, and yet it can all come from our gut, come from our inability to digest and absorb the necessary minerals, even though we may be eating a healthier diet than we have in the past, when we're just not even in the right foundation or right place to do so. It's interesting. So how do you I mean, I know you've talked about that a little bit with diagnosing it in the sense of gathering all the history, but are there specific tests that people should be asking providers to do, or even things that they could expect you or other naturopaths to do?
absolutely. So I do. The conventional doctors, they don't go in details of evaluating,
Well, yeah, they
getting
don't have the
the
time.
cost.
I mean, it's 5, 10, 15 minutes and then a prescription. Totally.
But absolutely, that's what how I had diagnosed is I do testing in the office to look at the gut evaluation, stool analysis, look at the if there's any hidden sources of infections, look at the blood test, how bad is the leaky gut really? That's where I'm looking on a scale of from 0 to 10. If the closer to 10 they are, the more aggressive with the treatment. We do the blood test to look at mineral deficiencies, mineral antioxidants, vitamin deficiencies. So that all usually with patients, the chronic, especially the chronic pain, they tend to be deficient, like you had already mentioned, the minerals like calcium, magnesium, even fat soluble vitamins like omega 3s, vitamin D. These seem to be really, really most common one. Antioxidants like glutathione that's supposed to flush out toxins through the phase 1, phase 2 liver detox. So if they don't have, if you don't have that knowledge and if you don't have the data, you don't, again, you just go to muscle relaxants or here just take an anti-inflammatory that
Ibuprofen, yeah,
uh,
800 milligrams. Yep.
opiates or some sort of it, and then and then obviously the chemicals they take in, their body system gets used to it. So you always you have to increase it. But by looking at the root cause and knowing exactly, you will have a roadmap what exactly you need to do with patients. And my patient come to me is like, I've never been evaluated in such details. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. They're grateful because instead of going to the back, going back and forth this loop of having the basic labs and then being told, oh, everything is good, just take this drug. Now we're getting to the root cause and they're getting better. They know exactly what needs to happen. And they get frustrated, but sometimes sad, and because they've been wasting so much time and energy and resources feeling ill, right? Because you
Hmm.
waste time when you don't feel good. You can't do the things you want
Hmm.
to do. You can't do the activities you want to do. You can't be the best version of you, of husband, wife, parent, neighbor, friend, because you don't feel good. If when
Right.
you have fibromyalgia cases, it's not just a joint issue. Now it's more emotional issue. Now it's more other aspect of it, or adrenal exhaustion, the hormones. And the other thing is the muscles, what they need to is having good amount of the hormones like testosterone,
Yeah.
estrogens, progesterone, because they're what I like to call the powerhouse, the fuel for the body system to have the energy to function. So we only understand at this time of era little about how body works, but enough to know, okay, we need to understand what's going on per individual patient cases, because everyone is different. Everybody's going to miss something being in different space. The leaky gut going to be in different people. They're going to have different infections and all that. We need to correct based on, like, from when it comes to my patients, and this is why we have such a great results, because I correct those imbalances super simple after that, because I have all the data that I need to. And now I'm just guiding them, whether it's with nutrition, some IV treatments initially to super heal their gut faster, heal their body system, and then we get them in the healthy maintenance zone.
That's excellent. And just for our listener, when you talk about adrenal exhaustion, what you should be listening to, and how I interpret, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that's more of how we respond to stress, external
Mhm.
stressors or internal stressors. So if you've had a very emotional day or very stressful day, you'll notice at the end of it, you're just exhausted. And sometimes everyone's tolerance to that is very different, or often everyone's tolerance to that is very different. And people who are more intolerant to those stress get exhausted much more quickly, and then we get the irritability, the I'm not you or I'm not me when I'm exhausted, when I'm in pain, because that irritability, patience level, all that increases, and then it's very difficult to be around those individuals. So
Yeah.
that's exactly what we hear that all the time. We have discussions with that about, with patients on the phone when we do our intake calls. It is one thing that we talk about is who else is affected by this condition,
Mhm.
because if it's low back pain or sciatica or even shoulder pain, you're not sleeping very well. We often don't realize how much our partners are on that journey with us, and how much they're suffering or having to deal with the fact that are they having to do more around the house, do more things for you, be very cognizant of the fact that, oh, we can't plan this activity because they can only walk for 5 or 10 minutes, or if we do plan this activity, we have to make sure we know where the benches or the seats are, because they can't go very far. And just how much weight is absorbed by the partner in the relationship, because it's gone on for so long, and it's exhausting to them. And many folks don't even realize how much that does play a part in their decision to get better, to get healthy, until they
Yeah,
bring it up and
absolutely.
talk
Yeah.
to them.
And pain is a huge stressor, just like you had mentioned, both parties, the entire family members, anyone who you've been around, people who've been in pain, they're in a sense, they can drain your energy because they're
Oh,
literally in
100%.
so much pain that they're not fully themselves. You can't be
Mm-mm.
yourself when your cortisol, the stress fight or flight response, is going at 300 miles per hour, and we're
Right.
supposed to be at 20 miles per hour, right? Just as an
Right.
example.
Well, they come in and say, "Oh, I'm so exhausted, but I haven't done anything." It's like, well, your body's been working hard for a long time. And they don't
Exactly.
realize how that plays a part in their energy level. So when they're always tired, always fatigued, and haven't done anything, these are things to be considering.
Absolutely. So definitely with someone with pain, we want to evaluate their gut, evaluate their adrenals, look at their hormones. A lot of times what happens is people go to the doctors and they're like, "Oh, you're in menopause. Don't worry about it. You don't have
Right.
any hormones, so that's fine." the fuel is on E, but just keep going, because that's just how you're supposed to be. So we need to look at that. We need to look at the metabolism. All play a role, because if you don't know the root cause, we're going to be in a situation where they're going through this cookie cutter approach, hoping to
Hmm.
alleviate some symptoms. But then over time, what happens is that, again, where they're wasting time, energy, effort, and they're going to cause more damage. So we need to get to the bottom of figuring out what's really happening, getting the patients well, get them empowered, inspire. And the other thing is, I actually had another podcast the other day, and I talked about when you're well, you literally you radiate that positive energy to everybody
Right.
else, to your family, to your neighbor, to your community. You'll accomplish more. You take full control, because we are adults. We are not supposed to be relying on someone else to take care of ourselves. So when we feel good, we take care of ourselves, and there's much less on the plate of somebody else. But we just gonna contribute more to everything that we do.
I completely agree with you. And when people do recognize, like, well, because we asked the question, remember back before this was hurting, what was life like? What is it you want to get back to doing like you were back then? And then they quickly realize just how many compromises to their life, to who they are, that they have made all along this process of being unwell, of being injured, all right, and dealing with this condition, whatever it might be. And more chronically, we see people suffering with spine pain, particularly low back pain,
Mhm.
and they don't even realize just how many small concessions they've made to their life, to where now they barely even recognize, who they used to be compared to who they currently are. And they've been led around or let down by other healthcare practitioners who are stuck in a model. Not the practitioner themselves are the problem, but the model is the problem of not being able to spend 60 minutes or 90 minutes with them to adequately diagnose what's going on and get to the root cause. So the treatment is very specific to what needs to be fixed, instead of the typical routine cookie cutter approach of playing to statistics of what has helped in the past for some of these people who look to appear to be this condition or to be this thing, and it's not it.
Mhm.
And so, to speaking to your model of care, I still can't get past the fact that you're with your patient for 90 minutes and have the opportunity to be with them for 90 minutes to run all the appropriate tests and understand what is going on, even back to preconception, to then bring them to the point where this is where we are now and here's how we need to address you moving forward. I'm floored at the fact that it's that in depth, and it would make sense that it needs 90 minutes if we're going to go back that far. So tell us, and then when you get into specifics and you start to prescribe a plan, are there certain foods that you prescribe? Is it supplements that you prescribe? What does treatment look like from a naturopathic physician such as yourself?
Treatment will very much vary from one person to another, but I always start with basics. So the first thing we need to do is eliminate some of the inflammatory foods that they're eating. The biggest one that I've seen to be major inflammatory food is usually the grains, like the bread, pasta, pizza, the
Okay,
carbs.
I would
They
have thought something else, but grains. Okay.
Grains, I start there. Well, and then in addition, dairy, and then the
Hmm.
sugar, right? Processed sugar. These are the three things.
That would
And
have
I
been my
start
number one go-to, but I guess grains, I can see that, because if they do have any kind of autoimmune or inefficiency in gut to deal with it, it's going to be a problem.
right. But if they say, hey, you know what, I eat ice cream every day, then we're starting, okay, we need to eliminate first the sugar, right? The sugar
Mhm.
component. But people don't realize how much sugar, in a sense, they're getting just from carbs, which is grains, right? The bread, the pasta, the pizza, the toast, and then those things are basically triggering these what we call the inflammatory response, the high cortisol levels, and then it's causing a disruption in all the body system. So if they're eating toast for every breakfast, then we'll say, okay, let's replace that with something else. Or if they eat in cereal every morning, right? Cereals, again, sugar and some carbs and some other things that can trigger inflammatory response. And we start with a basic diet protocol right away, so they
Sure.
can start as to heal the gut. It takes good amount, and this was from the research, but also helping many thousands of patients improve their health naturally. It takes good 3 to 6 months, sometimes up to 2 years, depending on how depleted, how severe the situations are, the conditions. So
And so
we
what you're
eliminate.
measuring along the way is in between the 3, 6 month to 12 month process, you're measuring along the way of what changes are we noticing based on some of the foods that we've eliminated and maybe some of the ones that you've added in, but mostly by some of the things that you've eliminated, just to pull out to get to a new baseline of now what are we dealing with? Am I hearing that correctly? Just to
Correct.
clarify.
That's correct. And then I look at the inflammatory markers at the beginning before we start the protocol, and throughout the process, throughout the
Okay.
program. So then we look at, and the patients like that because they get empowered, inspired, like,
Uh-huh.
oh, my inflammatory marker when I came like rate was 35, and now it's half of that. I'm happy. And that's probably why I'm having less joint pain and
Right.
moving
I'm feeling a
more.
little bit different.
Yeah, doing different. So we mark we and then we and they get, it's like a rewarding system for them. They feel good. They're like, or you know what, I do need to eliminate the processed sugar that I've been eating, or the grains, in a sense. You want to eat more plant whole foods, so forth. And then that's really where we start. So first we look at the basic, what are they, and if they're eating red meat, steak every single day, and that's usually what I see. And also in inflammatory markers, I already know what they're already eating. I was like,
Yeah.
hey, how much
Right.
red meat are you eating? Because your CR high sensitivity, which is the cardiac marker, is off the roof. It's usually from the red meat or sugar and all of that. And sugar is worse for joints and heart than bad fats. We used to think
Mm,
just the fats are bad. Actually, sugar is worse because sugar is sticky. It sticks the
yeah.
toxins to the vessels. It sticks the toxins. It really gets it to where it needs to be, and it's hard to get it out into the joints and muscle and so forth. So obviously, if I was to say, okay, out of the beginning, where would I say, yeah, processed sugar? Because I mean, 99% of our patients, or our community, or I should say, of our nation, it's suffering with some sort of health situation. Everyone is struggling with some sort of condition. They're either diagnosed or they're not diagnosed, but they're just not feeling well. So we started from basic nutrition aspect, because that's food medicine. Look at the grain component, like carbs. When you look at the simple carbs, in a sense, look at how much of the animal proteins they're eating. Because in a researcher, what we studied, we talked about the plant-based, the rabbit diet that we did on the, I shared that. We studied how that reduces the inflammation within, literally, we did the study within 6 months. Patients, and also we studied first in animals and human, they completely regained their system back, their
Wow.
joints, their health, the energy. So nutrition is important. And unfortunately, it's because we're taught from, a lot of us were taught from young childhood to eat things that are convenient, and that has become a very common symptom, I should say, a systemic, almost like a daily living for everyone, to
Right.
just stop by a
We
fast
are
food.
all in practice to stop
Yeah,
by the most convenient food or eatery, and they're becoming more and more abundant, more and more enticing, and it's still just as unhealthy or unhealthy as it always has been.
right.
I,
So
I completely agree with you.
yeah. And then so we were eating foods that are rich in calories but empty in nutrition. So we're eating a lot, we're gaining a lot of weight, but we're, in a sense, starving. Our systems are starving. And we don't just see that in adults. I see in this children too, and kids now. We see in the last decade, especially, we're seeing more and more kids who have joint inflammation. And there's a lot of
Interesting.
cases that, we see that
Yeah.
more injuries, more. So what's happening really is, again, we need to train them and educate them to eat more healthier lifestyle. I always educate my patients eating more what we call alkaline food sources, more plant-based things that are, if you go in, imagine if you go in a grocery, always start in the middle aisle where it's all the vegetables, or stay away from like all the processed boxes and things like that as much as possible. Right? If you can get a cucumber that you need to snack on instead of a M&Ms or chocolate cookie, then
Right.
stick with a cucumber. It's simple. It doesn't require a lot of preparation, because a lot of times we see patients say, I don't have time, or I just don't have time to prepare my food. Well, make right choices when you bring foods, healthier snacks. For example, I'm eating this week almonds, blueberries, and I'm also having some cauliflower. These are my snacks. That if
Yeah.
I don't have time to sit down and eat a meal, I'm gonna snack on these versus of just eating whatever's in front of me or whatever it's more convenient. Makes sense.
So yeah, do you offer then, like, going back to your toast example in the morning, if they're used to eating toast every day, what are some alternatives that you suggest that they do?
So, for example, if they're, because that's usually common, right? People eat cereal or toast for breakfast. So it's like, okay, how about, for example, what works well for me? Okay, so, or what has worked well for our patients? I might just eat an unsweetened coconut yogurt. I might add some fresh berries in there. Could be blueberries or mixed berries or frozen that are organic. Add some chia seeds to that. Some sort of, could be in the whole seed or a powder form, which is ground. For some people, it's just easier to digest. And that could be your breakfast. And eat at least 4 or 5 ounces. Trust me, and you're getting, what are you getting there? Antioxidants, you're getting fibers, you're getting healthy fats. You're not going to have this crash by, I'm like mid-morning and I need to eat again because I'm hungry.
Yeah,
You can
interesting.
do something,
So
or
coconut yogurt, huh? Interesting.
yeah, something like that, right? So because we're trying to deviate from having to have dairies, right? So dairy,
Hmm.
if you're able to eat eggs and you feel fine, then that's what, I don't eliminate eggs right away, depending on their gut issues, how much they're absorbing and so forth. Organic eggs and mixed with some, cook it with spinach, or some just simple things that you, but every meal, usually the first thing, the biggest thing when you want to educate your patients, you want to start your morning right, your day right, and end your day right. So what that means is, instead of the first thing when you wake up in the morning turn into coffee, have one or two full glass of water, because what do joints need? Hydration. You've been sleeping for 5 6 hours, you utilize the sources that were already stored, so we need to replenish right away. And you
Yeah.
can
Now,
have
wait a
the,
minute. Are 5 to 6 hours, is that enough sleep or is that just typical?
so most people see at least five. Well, some people sleep good 4 hours. The rest of it is turning or tossing.
Sure, sure,
Exactly.
sure.
But
So
ideally,
REM sleep versus others,
right,
but
right, right.
okay.
But at least, people are in bed for, I would say, 7 to 8 hours on average. So using
Totally
a
agree.
lot of stored resources, so you don't want to replenish right away. And I wouldn't encourage to start right away with, again, with a carb like a toast or even anything sweet. And this is what I was taught as a kid growing up on an organic farm. Eat few. Hey, if you don't have time to eat breakfast, carry with you some walnuts for, half a quarter or half a cup of walnuts. Eat it while you drive, while you go to your destination, or some almonds, or could be any of that, or some celery. Just snack on. It doesn't require any preparation. All it does is maybe 5 minutes ahead of time that needs to be nearby so you don't forget it. So that's
Yeah.
gonna, number one, it's gonna give you enough protein, because proteins are very essential, and healthy fats, to reduce the inflammation, to get the muscles strong. You want to give it the right healthy fats, like a right
Okay.
omega, DHA, and EPA, and then and the right amount of proteins like carnitine, that body can use it to carry oxygen into your muscles and joint. So then what you do is that, instead of shooting off your cortisol, and then what happens is when your cortisol stress hormone is up, so is your insulin, your blood sugar. So it's reducing that, less inflammation, less of other disruption, and less of the adrenal fatigue. And then you want to end your day. What I always tell my patients, you want ideally have dinner 2 hours before bedtime. I
Okay.
call it, yeah, I like the rule 3-2-1. 3 hours before bedtime is when you really want to make sure that you finish any physical activities. Let's say you're going to go to gym, you're going to work
Hmm.
out for an hour. 3 hours before bedtime. 2 hours before bedtime is when you finish your dinner. So, and then dinner should really be the one of the lightest meal, well, especially when it comes to high carbs. Like, you don't want to eat a bowl of rice at dinner time, right? So, you want to be a salad, some
Yeah.
wild caught fish, some healthy nuts in
Some
there.
easily digestible, more water-based
Exactly.
type products, it sounds like. Okay.
Anti-inflammatory. And then give it 2 hours before bedtime. An hour before bedtime is when you want to shut off all the electronics, phone, computers, iPad. So this way your body can reset and readjust and in a sense, get ready to
Yeah.
have that good quality of sleep. Because at night is when we heal, digest, and relax, and so forth, and regenerate.
Interesting.
That we
Yeah.
happens at night. That's when liver and gallbladder are most active. And then, so then we educate the patients, do that. And then hydration, hydration, hydration. It's very important. If you don't want to wake up, because we want to prevent sleep interruption, then don't drink much water after 5 p.m. or so, but during the day, shoot for at least close to a gallon, especially now that in Arizona, we're very, I see quite often, actually, more than we should see, heat exhaustion, which that leads to heat stroke and so forth, more problems. So especially
And that's
people who
from
are
poor hydration and too much
poor
exposure to heat.
hydration, yeah, or enough, you could not enough hydration, or they may be drinking but they're not absorbing. That's an
Right.
issue.
Inefficient hydration.
Insufficient hydration, absolutely.
Excellent. Well, that's fantastic because some of those areas I hadn't even thought about, and in particular, I like that you've offered a few non-animal based protein sources in the
Mhm.
yogurt, the coconut yogurt that I'm very interested in. I love coconut, but then also all your walnuts, your almonds, more plant-based sources, or even nut-based sources of protein that exist that won't spike our insulin levels, give us a big rush of sugar energy immediately, and then deal with the crash later in the afternoon. And that's very evident based on the huge popularity there is now of energy drinks, coffee sources. I mean, just about every beverage now is including some energy boost. That's just another way to package up caffeine. What do you notice about, this is now just a little bit off topic in a sense, but what do you notice more about caffeine and caffeine consumption and overall health or gut health or even sleep health?
Anyone who's having, generally speaking, all my patients, I encourage them to not have any caffeine after 2 p.m. because that's when your cortisol, if you were to look at, for example, your cortisol changes throughout the day. It's the
Yeah.
highest between 7 and 8, and then it drops ideally an hour or two before bedtime. We want it to be almost zero so we can induce natural hormone to help us sleep called melatonin. Well, if you do
Mhm.
have too much caffeine, even just not just after 2 p.m., it's going to cause the disruptions. Number one, it's going to cause more inflammatory response because when you have caffeine, your body senses that you need to keep going. You are, in a sense, you're running away from the bear. When you're
Right.
not, you're supposed to function more calm, relaxed, be able to focus, but at the same time, you're relaxed. You should, if healthy body systems shouldn't need caffeine to function, right? So, okay, you're gonna have a cup of coffee in the morning. Ideally, we don't want to add any sugar or creamer, right? Just have plain coffee, good quality of coffee. Okay, I get it. Less small amount, it's okay. But if you're like most cases, you have to have 3 or 4 cups by the time with an hour of waking up because you're just trying to wake up. Then you're going to put your body system under more stress. But first of all, caffeine is dehydrating because it's a
Hmm.
natural diuretic. So it's going to dehydrate your muscles, your joints, your heart. So you're not going to, how can you function when you're just don't even have enough hydration in your body system? Your brain needs hydration to focus and function. Your body needs hydration to detox and so forth. Number two is I know especially athletes, they lack those or those quick energy boosters, but a long term can put you in a cardiac arrest. So you want to make increases your heart rate, puts all your body systems
All
under
kinds of stress on the heart. Yeah.
stress. Yeah, so you want to make sure that but even before, and if you're gonna have some green tea, I prefer more herbal teas are not as high in caffeine. It's not gonna cause so much havoc in in your hormones in your body system. Green tea will be good. It has less caffeine, but if it's a good quality, also has antioxidants like EGCG, so it helps at least balance more versus we want to eat foods that are again healing, drink things that are healing to our body system instead of whatever it tastes good for that moment or whatever we need to get that quick jump start.
Excellent. Now, just from a standpoint of understanding for listeners, you've mentioned organic foods. I've been reading that not all organic foods are created the same. How are organic foods being defined, and how do we better assess what good organic versus, I don't know, for lack of a better word, but fake organic is? Do you have any suggestions?
Usually what I do is there's especially on the produce, you can tell by the code. The code shouldn't lie, right? Anything a 9, I do trust that because that's more regulated. Anything like 9, it's organic, like so that you're gonna buy apples. But the main thing is you want to start is at least avoid those what we call dirty dozen foods. I'm not sure if you heard of
I
that
haven't heard of these.
before. Yeah, the dirty dozen foods are the environmental toxicology in the United States have put together as a team group of scientists where they study this 12 foods that are the highest in chemicals, meaning highest in the pesticides and herbicides. If you
Wow.
want to grow these foods, the agriculture that has to use a ton of chemicals to grow them abundantly. So those foods that I'm going to share with you, you want to absolutely buy them organic. Even if you don't know if it's a trusted source, at least we know the organics less amount of glyphosate chemicals that causes disruption in our brain health, digestions, muscles, and so forth. But for example, the dirty dozen foods, and you can just actually Google it, okay, environmental toxicology, 12 dirty dozen foods, and you'll see it. It changes kind of from year to year, but the main ones don't change. Like, for example, apples. If you're gonna, I love apples to snack on. I'll have an apple that I'm gonna dip in coconut butter or almond butter, but I'll make sure that apples are organic because it requires a lot of a lot of pesticides,
Uh-huh.
which is chemicals to grow. Same thing with berries, blueberries, strawberries. So those you want to
Mm.
ideally have the label in there that says or organic or verified organic and so forth. So those are the main ones. And then you go down, for example, the spinach is fairly, it needs a lot to grow, a lot of pesticides and herbicides. So I always tell my patients, start there, have those, buy those 12, if you're, especially if it's on a budget, buy those organic. And if you can buy everything else that's even more, organic, everything else, then that's fine. But if you're gonna have a budget versus apples and avocado, then I'll buy apples that are organic, and avocados, if it's not organic, it's not the end of the world. Does it make sense?
Yeah, definitely. So you're getting more bang for your buck, more value from an organic perspective by knowing what these dirty dozen are that might change a little bit from year to year. So worth checking on. Is there an online source that you use to help identify those, or are they just ones that you've kind of memorized and been working with for so long?
I just have the main ones that I have actually printed out, both for my patients or a list of, okay, these are the foods. But
Yeah.
they don't, as far as foods, they don't really change much. The main ones are always there, like the apples, the blueberries, the spinach, tomatoes, I believe it's there, things like that. So papaya. So those are the main ones. They don't change much. Sometimes they add an additional, for example, could be an additional food sources of forth, but main one steak. And then, so I print those out and I have my patients, okay, put somewhere where you can have it, take a picture of it or carry with you. So at least,
Hmm.
you focus on eating those foods that are healthy. Spinach is healthy, but and then plus you talked about calcium, you get more calcium from spinach than you actually get from dairy because dairy is very acidic. And actually, when you have milk, what happens is very acidic and it's going to cause more of the leach of calcium from the bones instead of rebuilding nutrition that you get from spinach or broccoli, etc.
That's excellent. We're running a bit low on time. Tell us, last two questions. What's something that you tell your clients every day that you wish you could just play on, you can just record and play on repeat because you say it so often, because it's that important or that common? What would you say that is?
I always tell them to never give up. So if one thing didn't work for you, let's get to the next. The thing is what happens in our society is that we tend to give up a little too soon. And right
Hmm.
before our the breakthrough, oh, or I can't do it because diet is too hard, or I can't do it because you told me to drink two more glasses of water than I normally do. Don't give up. Make small adjustments is better than nothing because the small steps taken forward to wellness, it's going to add up to a big step, and then you will be surprised how much healthier you're going to feel. So never give up. Always strive to improve something about your health, even if it's one increment at a time.
I love it. Lower the barrier, get a little bit better each time, and then we'll see what happens and stick with it.
Mhm.
And what's the best way, people who have more questions for you or want to reach out to you, what's the best way for people to connect with you?
You can connect to me through my website, mnhcaz.com. Usually there is my phone number there, my information there. I have a
Yeah, we'll put a
Facebook.
link in the description.
Yeah.
Totally. Okay.
Yeah.
And I know you're pretty active on social media. Is Facebook your preferred platform?
Yes, for now, because it's the only platform that I know how to use it.
Okay. Totally. And was it Moringa? Tell me again how to find you on Facebook.
Facebook, you just go Moringa Natural Health Center, and then you can like the link, follow me. I go there. I usually
Perfect.
go. There are people on podcasts that I kind of stream through there. I go live myself, share some really powerful tool because I have patients all over the valley, the country, the world. So it's really good to keep them up to date. So I'm always constantly updating information for our community, just hoping to educate them and empower and inspire them to continue to stay healthy, be healthy, and wherever at whatever stage of their health they are, they're taking that forward movement to be the best optimal health that they want to be.
Excellent. thank you again so much for your time. It's been a wealth of knowledge and understanding what is gut health and how important it is, how to improve digestive efficiency. That was one of the biggest takeaways from our discussion today, is that we all are suffering with some level of digestive inefficiency. And we don't know is how is it affecting us? How is it changing the way that we feel, our cortisol levels or stress levels, how it can change those, and how important it is to be aware of the fact that managing it or doing something about it can change the way that we feel and function. Huge takeaways from me today. I really appreciate it. Thank you again so much for your time. I absolutely look forward to having more conversations with you in the future.
Thank you so much, Doctor, for having me. Take care.
You're welcome. Thank you. All right, now end the episode. Thank you so much. That was awesome. Such a great knowledge, and you did a great job of going slow as far as explaining things, but then also helping understand this is something that some folks may apply right away and just kind of test out. But then you also left a whole bunch of opportunities for them to say, hey, wait, I've got a whole lot of questions. I need to talk to her, because I could think of 2 or 3 patients right now that I think would be a great fit for what you do. And I'm thrilled to see what happens for them. So thank you again.
Thank you so much.
All right. Have a great day. And when this is all finished up and we've got it figured out, we'll post it on our social media platform. We'll tag you in it. And then if you would like the actual like digital copy of it, just let me know. I'll send it over to you so you can, if you want to cut it up differently or use whatever portion of it, obviously feel free to do whatever you want to do.
That'll be awesome. Thank you so much for having me. Take care. It was a nice.
You're welcome.
Take care. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.